Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're cracking open the history books, well, a stack of sources, really, going back to the mid 17th century.
Mm.
We're looking at the kind of messy, unlikely start of Jamaica as an English colony, an island nobody really wanted at first, which, somehow became this massive source of wealth for the British Empire.
Yeah, that's our mission today, isn't it? To really chart that whole transformation. We're going from this military target they sort of stumbled into a real consolation prize, all the way to becoming the absolute center of the sugar trade in the British Caribbean.
And we'll focus on the politics behind it, the desperate struggles, and some pretty surprising twists that actually saved the whole venture.
Exactly. And you really have to start with Oliver Cromwell, the man who ordered the invasion.
Right, his big strategy, the Western design. You can't understand early Jamaica without it.
Absolutely. And what's so interesting is how it shows this huge shift in European power games in the 1600s. Cromwell figured, fighting Spain directly in Europe, too expensive, too complicated.
So hit them elsewhere.
Precisely. The Western design was this massive gamble, really. Let's grab Spain's rich New World territories, cut off their gold and silver supply, and weaken them without a big, messy war back home.
And this ties right into that whole economic idea of the time, mercantilism. The sources stress it wasn't just about making merchants rich.
No, that's the key thing. It was about national power. Mercantilism was like a zero-sum game back then. For England to get stronger, rivals like Spain had to get weaker.
So the government had to control trade.
Yeah, regulate everything to boost England's power compared to others. They wanted Jamaica to help build up treasure, grow their shipping fleets, and, crucially, establish a loyal population. It was meant to be like an economic weapon.
But what they planned and what actually happened in 1655, well, they were totally different things. The invasion, May 10th, 1655, wasn't even their first choice.
Oh, not even close. It was
Yeah.
Plan B, and a pretty disastrous one at that.
Yeah.
Cromwell's forces were already worn out, demoralized. They just failed, quite spectacularly, to take Hispaniola.
The real prize.
The real prize, exactly.
Yeah.
So they turned to Jamaica because it was, well, available and less defended. But it was huge, like 25 times bigger than Barbados, which was England's main colony then. A massive undertaking.
Okay, so the leaders, Admiral Penn and General Venables, they finally land at Passage Fort, and initially, not much of a fight.
Surprisingly little. The Spanish settlers nearby, they actually thought it was just another raid, like pirates looking for loot.
So they tried to pay them off?
Sort of. They met the English outside St. Iago, that Spanish town, and offered them food and supplies, basically hoping they'd take it and leave quickly.
Which Venables, whose troops were starving, probably jumped at.
He absolutely did. And that was the moment the Spanish settlers realized, uh-oh, this isn't just a raid. These guys are here to stay.
So the Spanish governor, Ramirez, he's forced to sign away all the property. But
Yeah.
that wasn't the end of the resistance, was it?
Not by a long shot. Many Spanish settlers just refused. They, along with the enslaved Africans they freed right then and there, just melted away into the island's interior.
And teamed up with people already resisting the Spanish?
Yes, the Maroons. These were formerly enslaved Africans who had already escaped into the mountains and forests, building their own independent communities. Very formidable fighters.
So the Spanish and Maroons joined forces.
Exactly. And they started launching these, what people at the time called guerrilla-like attacks against the English. Hit-and-run tactics, making occupation very difficult.
Which brings us right into this really desperate period for the English, say 1655 to 1660. The situation sounds incredibly grim. They had the numbers, maybe 8,000 soldiers.
But they were weakened. And crucially, they had no idea how to survive there. They were facing maybe 2,500 Spanish locals, but the English were just crippled by poor supplies.
And the environment itself.
Oh, absolutely. Not enough food, oppressive heat, and then the killer, disease. Dysentery just swept through the ranks almost immediately.
Right.
Malnutrition made them vulnerable.
The letter sent back to Cromwell, they're just horrifying. It really sounds like Jamaica itself was killing the invaders faster than the Spanish could.
It was. General Venables wrote a letter, I think June 4th, saying his men look more like dead men crept out of their graves than persons living. Just devastating descriptions. He said they barely had 2 healthy colonels left.
Wow. Losing officers like that must have crushed morale.
Completely. And the leadership, they didn't exactly inspire confidence by sticking around.
No, they bailed.
Pretty much. Admiral Penn left June 25th. Venables, who was sick himself, followed on July 4th. Cromwell saw this as pure abandonment.
And he wasn't pleased.
Not at all. Sent them both straight to the Tower of London the moment they got back, leaving their posts without permission. They got out later, but were dismissed. Shows you how seriously Cromwell took this, even if it was a consolation prize.
So now it's Major General Fortesque in charge, and Cromwell is scrambling to save the colony. Fortesque is complaining his men just wanted gold and silver, not hardship.
Right. So Cromwell kicks off this emergency recruitment drive. He desperately needed people, anyone, to hold the island.
Started with incentives. Land.
Huge land offers, yeah. 20 acres for every man, 10 more for each woman or child. But word probably got back about the conditions. Not enough takers.
So things got darker.
Much darker. Forced migration. This is where it gets really brutal, reflecting the times. Cromwell essentially treated certain populations as disposable.
The Irish children.
He ordered 1,000 Irish boys and 1,000 Irish girls, all under 14, rounded up, shipped to Jamaica, and sold as indentured servants. Basically, slave labor for a fixed term.
And not just children.
No, he also ordered officials to round up, quote, idle, male or female masterless robbers and vagabonds from England and Scotland and ship them out too. Just trying to populate the place by any means necessary.
It's important to remember what's happening back in Britain then, right? This isn't happening in a vacuum.
Absolutely not. England's still a republic under Cromwell after the Civil War. Charles V executed. Cromwell's grip on power involved suppressing dissent, especially in Ireland. Lands confiscated, people forcibly moved.
So Jamaica becomes kind of a dumping ground for the fallout of British politics.
In many ways, yes. A direct consequence of the instability in Cromwell's policies back home.
But then more instability. Cromwell dies in 58.
Yep, 1658, the whole Republican government starts to crumble without him. And by 1660, bam, the Restoration. Charles II, the executed king's son, is back on the throne.
Which changes things for Jamaica again.
Profoundly. The new monarchy wants stability, wants to make these colonies work. They move to finalize the conquest. Governor Edward D'Oyly, who took over after Fortesque died, managed a major coup.
How so?
He persuaded a key Maroon leader, Juan de Bolis, to switch sides and fight with the English against the remaining Spanish. That was pretty much the nail in the coffin for the Spanish resistance. By 1660, the last of them gave up and fled to Cuba.
Okay, so the Spanish are gone. But D'Oyly's description of Jamaica in 1660 still sounds pretty bleak. He said there was, what, neither money in the treasury, victuals in the storehouses?
Yeah, a sense of being deserted by their own country. It was still this fever-ridden, basically empty outpost, and still vulnerable to attack from the Spanish in Cuba or the French.
So Charles II tells D'Oyly in 61, disband the army, it's too expensive, get people planting crops. But how do you defend the island with no army and no money?
That was D'Oyly's massive problem. His solution was creative and risky. He basically decided to use criminals as his defense force.
The buccaneers.
Exactly. He invited about 250 buccaneers, privateers, pirates, basically state-sanctioned robbers to set up shop in Port Royal. He gave them letters of marque, authorizing them to attack Spanish ships and towns.
Let chaos be the shield.
Pretty much. And it worked in the short term. Port Royal boomed. All that plunder made it rich, fast. It apparently rivaled Boston in size and activity, and having hundreds of hardened pirates based there certainly made the Spanish and French think twice about attacking Jamaica directly.
But that created another problem.
Oh yeah, a big one for long-term development. Why bother clearing land, planting crops, dealing with disease, and backbreaking labor when you could sign on to a pirate ship and potentially get rich quick raiding the Spanish Main?
So piracy actively discouraged the farming settlements they needed.
Completely. It gave Jamaica this reputation for lawlessness, which scared off the more stable, respectable settlers the crown actually wanted. You see the numbers. By 1663, the population was still tiny, only about 4,200 people.
So the crown was trying to build a proper colony while relying on, well, pirates for security. A tricky balancing act.
Very tricky. But they kept trying to push the settlement angle. Thomas Modiford arrived in 1664, brought about 1,000 settlers with him. Later, more settlers came when the English colony in Suriname was abandoned.
And they kept pushing the land offers.
Constantly. Now it was 30 acres for anyone over 12 who came, trying desperately to get people farming.
Did the official treaty with Spain help when Spain finally gave up Jamaica in 1670?
The Treaty of Madrid, yes. That definitely helped boost confidence. Spain officially recognized English control. That was supposed to end the privateering too.
But it didn't really.
Not immediately, no. Buccaneering continued out of Port Royal pretty much until the end of the century, despite the treaty. Old habits die hard, especially profitable ones.
So even with the treaty, the land offers, the buccaneer defense, settler numbers stayed low. Why? What was the biggest hurdle?
Well, according to many historians, like Trevor Bernard, the single biggest obstacle Maybe even more than the difficulties attracting settlers was just the sheer death rate among the Europeans who did come.
The diseases just kept killing newcomers.
Relentlessly. Governor Modiford himself wrote about the uncommon mortality, especially in the summer and fall, particularly near swampy areas and river mouths like Port Morant. They just couldn't survive the seasoning.
What was the main killer? Do we know?
Yellow fever seems to have been a huge one for Europeans. Malaria, too. Tropical diseases they had absolutely no immunity to and no idea how they spread.
Right. The mosquito connection wasn't understood for centuries.
Exactly. Not until after 1900. So for settlers in the 17th century, it was just this invisible, terrifying killer. Combined disease with the climate, the unfamiliar hardships of tropical agriculture, mortality rates were sky high.
Okay, so high death rates, lawlessness, slow settlement. How on earth does Jamaica pivot from that to becoming the sugar powerhouse?
It was slow and, frankly, brutal. But it all goes back to Charles II's original command: encourage planting. Despite all the failures and the slow start over those first, say, 50 years, the plantations that did get established, often by those original soldiers who survived.
The ones who got the land grants early on.
Yes, exactly. Those who survived the fevers and the fighting, they laid the groundwork. They started planting sugarcane, importing enslaved Africans in ever larger numbers to do the horrific labor, and slowly, Jamaica's sugar production ramped up.
Until it overtook Barbados.
By the 1720s, yeah. Jamaica became the #1 sugar exporter and, grimly, the #1 importer of enslaved people in the entire British Caribbean. The sugar boom had arrived.
And with it, the rise of the plantocracy. Can you explain that term for listeners? What did that mean for Jamaica?
The plantocracy basically means a small, very wealthy, elite group of white plantation owners came to dominate everything. Not just the economy, but politics, society, law, everything on the island.
Power consolidated in the hands of the sugar barons.
Completely. They ran the colonial assembly, they made the rules, and the entire system was geared towards maximizing sugar profits, built entirely on the forced labor of hundreds of thousands of enslaved Africans. It was a system born directly out of that initial desperation and conquest we talked about.
And you can actually trace the lineage of some of those very first soldiers, the ones who survived, right into the heart of that plantocracy.
You really can. Take a guy named Hersey Barrett. He was part of the original invasion force in 1655. He got one of the very first land patents in 1663.
And the Barrett name becomes significant later.
Hugely significant.
Yep.
He's actually the great-great-great-great-great-grandfather of the famous poet Elizabeth Barrett Browning.
Wow. Small world.
Isn't it? The Barrett family became incredibly wealthy planters on the North Coast, owned over 10,000 acres eventually, and even founded the town of Falmouth. They perfectly represent that transition from soldier to powerful planter.
And there are other examples linking back to that initial invasion force.
Oh, yes. Another veteran, Francis Dickinson. He also served under Penn and Venables, got a grant of about 6,000 acres. That land included the spot where Appleton rum is made today.
Huh. And his family story is pretty wild too, right?
It really captures the chaos of the era. His son, Jonathan Dickinson, was in Port Royal during the massive earthquake of 1692.
The one that basically destroyed the pirate haven.
Exactly. He survived, left Jamaica for Pennsylvania, got shipwrecked off Florida, captured by Native Americans, eventually rescued, made his way to Philadelphia, and ended up becoming mayor of Philadelphia.
No way.
True story. There's even a state park in Florida named after him, Jonathan Dickinson State Park. And his daughter, Mary, married a major planter back in Jamaica, Ezekiel Gummersall, who owned Cherry Garden Plantation. Ties back into the plantocracy again.
It's incredible how these individual stories connect that chaotic beginning to the eventual structure of colonial power.
It really shows how those brutal early years, despite the disease and failures, literally laid the groundwork, the land grants, for what became the British Empire's most profitable and arguably most brutal colony.
Yeah.
It went from this fever swamp saved by pirates and desperation to this sugar machine built on slavery.
An unbelievable transformation, really. From military failure to economic engine. We've covered the shocking death rates, the forced migrations, the reliance on buccaneers. Which leaves us with a kind of provocative question, doesn't it?
I think so.
When you look at that initial period, the failure of the original plan, the disease killing off so many, the struggle to attract settlers who weren't convicts or kidnapped children, you have to wonder, was the early survival and success of English Jamaica driven more by that sanctioned chaos, the piracy based in Port Royal, than by any organized plan or structure coming from the English Empire itself? Something for you, the listener, to think about.